Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Just letting you know the meeting is being recorded so folks can watch it. My name is Nadia Khan. I'm with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I'm also a teacher, so this fight is very dear to me. This is our meeting for our fight against the war on youth, which hopefully all of us here are engaged in various fights against the different wars on youth that are happening and that have been happening. Before we get started, just wanted to share a couple of logistics with you. Basically, one is that we do have the chat on private right now. So if you want to share something, you can just send it to us. We do have everyone on mute. The reason for this is because we have been Zoom bombed, including at our last month's War on Youth meeting. So we don't want to censor folks, but it's just the reality of what we're dealing with. However, when we do get to the discussion part, we'll definitely open up the chat. We do want to hear what folks have to say and any questions. But in the meantime, if you do have any questions, feel free to send it. There's a few of us are the co-hosts, so we'll be able to answer or at least relay the comment. And also wanted to share that every Tuesday we do have these webinars. Our first Tuesday of the month is dedicated to gender and sexuality and how surveillance and the police state impacts gender and sexuality. Our second Tuesday is this war on youth fight. Our third Tuesday is our general meetings where we bring together the different fights. We look at the political landscape and share different ways for folks to get involved. And then the fourth Tuesday is dedicated to our fight against data-driven policing. And then sometimes when there's a fifth one, we choose different things. So just wanted to share that. And so for now, and we have also Students Deserve here today. So we'll be talking with them in just a moment. And so wanted to first pass it off to Celine to give us a little background on what exactly do we mean when we say the fight against the war on youth.
Hey everybody, my name is Celine. I go by she, her. I'm with the Palestinian Youth Movement. I'm a member of the regional Los Angeles, Orange County, and Inland Empire chapter. And we're a grassroots youth organization that are organizing and mobilizing Arab and Palestinians to, play a role in our struggle, assume responsibility in our struggle for liberation. And part of our organizing has been really, working really closely with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition to combat surveillance programs locally, or to combat also like ways that we see Zionism, surveillance, war on terror, like making those connections and combating like the legislation and the harmful policies and programs that are coming out. And there are three programs that we've been organizing against for years now in partnership with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And they're all based on this idea that there is such a thing as like a clear and identifiable path to extremism or to radicalization, and that there are indicators that can reveal when someone is on that path. And so these programs are based off of something called the radicalization theory, which posits that like increased religiosity and politicization of Muslims would lead to an increased threat of terrorism. And we see that having its legacy also in the broken windows policing model, which theorizes that like local, cultural, and social everyday norms play a role in the development of criminal activity, thereby justifying policing of everyday life in Black communities, because it's insinuating that something small could lead to a large crime. And that's similar to radicalization theory, assuming that increased politicization, for example, or religiosity or community involvement could lead to terrorism in Muslim communities. So, and again, these logics are really deeply racist because they imply that criminality and terrorism are inherent to certain communities. And the reason they're framed that way is so that policing and surveillance is justified, or can be justified. So we can see how, there's this program called the Countering Violent Extremism program that was originated by the Department of Homeland Security, that was piloted in Los Angeles, in Boston, and in Minneapolis in 2014. And in those, since then we've been fighting it in Los Angeles and we've been able to defeat it, but they keep pushing it under different, they keep renaming it and pushing it again. through different avenues. So the indicators of quote unquote extremism that the Department of Homeland Security outlined included things like regularly attending a mosque or being concerned about discrimination, not trusting law enforcement, growing a beard or facial hair, being critical of US foreign policy. So just things around like primarily just being, basically if you're involved in your community, if you're part of a religious or ethnic or cultural group, student group, for example, and if you're political, you would basically be categorized as a quote unquote extremist. So, and the way these programs work, there also is the Preventing Violent Extremism program that came out of the FBI that was really targeting youth in schools and K through 12 schools. And we also saw the FBI release the Black Identity Extremism designation to categorize Black organizers as potential terrorists or extremists. And the way these programs work are really insidious because they operate by partnering. They try to be, law enforcement will describe them as community-led initiatives because they try to partner with community institutions that already have relationships with community members or community institutions that offer services where they have clients or patients, and try to partner with them to get them to report on these indicators of extremism. So that's basically how these programs operate. They're all premised on this like pre-crime model that's deeply racist. And and there's been a new round of grants. It was recently rebranded by the Department of Homeland Security. So now it's called the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Program. And the most recent grants were released in September of 2020. So our campaign here with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition and the Palestinian Youth Movement is locally, we've been fighting these programs for years, and we are combating the recent iterations of these grants that were released in 2020. And we're going to be having a public webinar about CVE in schools and about these surveillance programs as they're getting pushed in schools. We're trying to host this webinar sometime at the end of the month or next month. So just, keep a lookout for the flyer on our social media pages soon, but I'll wrap up there. Sorry, I went a little bit over time, and pass it back to you, Nadia.
Well, that's all good, Celine. Yeah, and just want to remind folks if I listed some of the programs in there, and if folks have any questions, feel free to send us a message. So I'd like to go ahead and just introduce and have Amara introduce themselves here representing Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard as well as Students Deserve. So Amara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Amara Abdullah. I'm a co-founder of the Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard. I'm 14. I work heavily with Students Deserve. I think I'm a member, but I'm heavily affiliated with Students Deserve. I love Students Deserve and everybody in it. Yeah, that's really it.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, really happy to have you here as well. So I'm so glad you're here with us. I know, busy with school and organizing, so definitely sure you got a lot on your plate. But I just wanted to basically get started and see, Amara, if you can just talk about both Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard and Students Deserve, like who they are and how do the two groups support each other and build together.
So Students Deserve is definitely older than Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard. Students Deserve is a group who focuses on mainly making Black Lives Matter in schools, but also making people of color feel included in public schools or just schools in general. Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard is an extension of Black Lives Matter. So we do work super closely with Black Lives Matter as well as Students Deserve. It's very rare that Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard will do something, will host an event or, have an action without Students Deserve or Black Lives Matter. So yeah, most of the things that Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard does is an affiliation with Students Deserve. We work with them very closely, very often.
sorry, I realized I was on mute. Nice, thank you. So what are some of the main issues then that both of the groups work on, whether it's on their own or together? If you could just talk about that, please.
Mainly ending police association with schools. Recently, that's something that we've been focusing on. So like ending random searches, divesting from the school police budget, defunding school police overall, getting rid of school police, because we know that that's rooted in the criminalization of Black and brown youth, and how they're mainly in, our schools and Black and brown schools is not a coincidence. So yeah, it's basically what Students Deserve motto is making Black Lives Matter in schools.
Yeah, no, and that's something I know like we really vibe with, because I mean our work is around against policing as well. And I'm thinking of just, CVE and how it and PVE, Preventing Violent Extremism, it's really they claim to be, to not be working with law enforcement, but then really turning community members into policing each other as well. So it just kind of makes me think of like all the manifestations, of policing, right, on schools, or even how teachers engage in the policing of their students.
Yeah.
So yeah. I know you kind of mentioned some, but I wanted to see if you could just talk a little more about some of the victories that Students Deserve, some of the recent ones around the defunding and the police off campus. I was wondering if you could just talk about those, maybe some of the organizing, or however, what your role maybe was, whatever you'd like to share about them.
So Black Lives Matter and Students Deserve have been trying to get random searches ended for as long as I can remember. It's not a secret that we don't like random searches, because we know that the main, most of the kids who are searched during those random searches are people of color, mainly Black youth. And they'll take like hand sanitizer and perfume and just dumb stuff. And the fact that they search us and make us feel like we did something wrong, even though within that whole 2-year period of random searches, they hadn't found, boy, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure if it was 2 years. I think it's 2 years. They hadn't found any weapons. They hadn't found any weapons and in LAUSD. So we know that they're doing it for no reason. Why did they keep doing it after they realized that these kids weren't bringing guns to school, making us feel like we're the problem? So random searches were ended because we had been working on it for 2 years. We had been working on the ending of random searches for 2 years. That's why I thought it was 2 years. So yeah, that was a really big victory for us. I remember my sister was really happy because she had got searched, and she wasn't like one of the only ones. I'm lucky enough to not have been searched, but it was so consistent that most of the kids in Students Deserve and Black Lives Matter had been searched. Another victory that we've had is divesting $35 million from the school police budget. I think that was around April. And yeah, that was like one of the biggest things, because we didn't think that it was going to happen that fast, because we had only been working towards defunding school police for like a year, I want to say. And, we even thought that the ending of random searches was fast. So that was just, a great thing for us. Another thing is we recently, really recently, I'm not sure when it was, but it was like super recent, and we got school police, actually, like we defunded school police overall. So there's no more school police. we got some of that money. I think it was 25 million this time. So we got 35 million divested first, and then we got another 25 million divested. And that money is going to us, the community, and it's going to be redistributed into, you know, communities that need it, like youth education and mental health counselors, also more actual school counselors, because last year I was in 8th grade, my sister was in 12th grade. We had the same counselor. My counselor I could rarely see my counselor when I needed her, because she had like 500 kids to take care of. No counselor should have to take care of 500 kids. And it's only not fair to the counselor, it's also not fair to the kids. We only had a nurse on like Thursdays. It was just like terrible. And my school wasn't even like that diverse. Like my school was just a regular public school. So it's just like the fact that they don't care about us is so, like, it's not hard to notice. I guess I'm only allowed to get hurt on Thursdays. So yeah, it was just like a really weird experience having to like normalize that, you know? You're muted.
Sorry, I did that again. Yeah, no, thank you for really breaking those down. And, you know, I was thinking even just how, like, you know, what you said, how it's not even fair to the counselors or students, and thinking of how sort of us on the front line, whether it's, you know, the people working at the schools or the students, and the systems were set in to almost be then against each other, right? Or to not really be able to support. And yeah, I just want to shout out like to those victories. I mean, it really just shows the power of young people. So shout out to all of you for that. And I just wanted to see if you could maybe talk a little bit about just, you know, some of the like organizing strategies, and maybe what are some of the challenges you face. You know, this is being recorded, so I'm sure folks who aren't here, students, might watch this later. So maybe if you could share some of your organizing strategies, and what were some of the challenges as well, for both.
One of the biggest challenges about youth organizing is like, it's not necessarily cool among other kids. Like, I'm not saying it's not cool to me, like it's not cool amongst other kids. So like during the peak of Black Lives Matter, of course it was cool to post a black screen and you at a protest downtown with like 5 million other people. But it's like, after Black Lives Matter has, you know, lost a little bit of attention, and like the subject isn't as trendy, it's hard to get people to want to come out and organize, especially youth, because you're focused on social status and you're focused on what your friends think. So I guess it's like the main problem with youth organizing is actually like making youth understand how important it is, because I honestly didn't understand that I was being criminalized in my school. I thought it was my fault. I thought that was just me. So I feel like if I didn't have like the family and community that I did, then I wouldn't have gotten into organizing as much as I am now. So it's like, kids are ignorant. We all know this. So it's like, it's about making kids want to learn, because you'll notice these things once somebody points it out. Like, there's no reason that the school police should have to escort you to their like office inside the campus because you talked out of turn in class. That's criminalization. And like the small little things that you notice that you're like, oh, that's kind of weird, but hey, I guess it's just like this because I'm at a new school, or I guess it's just like this because I messed up that one time, or I guess it's just like this because I was late to class today. It's not normally our fault that we're being criminalized, and we are taught to normalize it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just thinking of the different ways, right? And then I'm sure a lot, just all the extra challenges, and then of being young, and then the programs on top of that that are coming down on you all. So yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it kind of then relates then to the question I'm thinking of. So then how have the groups, yourself and or the groups, just developed youth leadership, right? So what does youth leadership look like, and what do you think have been, so two questions, I think. What has youth leadership development looked like, and then what have been some of the challenges during COVID, particularly?
Um, One of the challenges during COVID, like that I have noticed, is like parents, because a lot of kids' parents have like pre-existing health conditions and like are very strict about COVID. So like we don't have nearly as many youth that I think we would have if COVID wasn't here right now, especially because like BLM has some, like BLM, the network, like BLM, the hashtag has so much attention right now that people are like more so going to social media. But like, I'm going to be 100% honest, that's not enough. Um, schools don't really, schools aren't going to care unless they see us organizing in multiple different areas. So I think that it's like more important for us to find different ways and be more creative with the ways that we organize, because then we'll get like attention from a bunch of different places. But yeah, that's like definitely something that's, the pandemic has definitely affected us in a negative way, but also a positive way, because I think that like, since we have time to sit down and think about like, oh my gosh, sorry, like kids are doing better learning online sometimes now, because they don't have to deal with school police. They don't have to deal with that racist teacher who would keep calling on them to talk about slavery or something like that, because youth know what we need. Like, we're not listened to in schools. Like, there's not enough schools don't take our opinions into consideration as much as they should. So I feel like now, since we like have time to reflect and have time to learn on our own without the influence of the people around us, it's given us like kind of a better understanding of what we need.
Would you, and then in terms of like, I'm just kind of thinking of then the organizing with Students Deserve, how has it been then, like specifically kind of, how would you say it even affected some of the victories, or just in general, like, trying to gain some of what you're asking for when, it's hard to maybe get folks out to an action because of quarantine?
So one thing is, school board meetings have been online recently. So people have been recording them, and that's definitely something that has helped, because when school board meetings are being recorded and you're seeing the looks on these school board members' faces after we like say what we need and say what we want from them, people are just like, what is happening? Isn't the whole point of these meetings like for you to listen to the parents of these kids and for you to listen to these kids? So I feel like that's definitely something that's affected us positively. Students Deserve is always at the school board's meetings. I think they go to every single one. Yeah, it's just like crazy. They're like at 2:00 or something, so I can't always go. But school board meetings are definitely a time where the youth tries and takes over.
Yeah, I was even thinking just of how, even with these meetings, for example, and, sometimes I would talk to folks and like, man, I really wish I could make it, but, getting out to LA at 6 p.m. And so I guess that has its own kind of, I guess, unintentional advantage, right? Of being able to sort of attend online.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Amara. And I think just, I think one of the things thinking of, right, like how, how important it has been for all of us to really uplift Black students and Black lives. So what would you say, like, what do you think it means then to make Black Lives Matter at schools?
One, just decriminalizing the schools overall. Like, if you just look at schools, they literally look like jail, like a less intense version of jail. Like, why do we have bars on our windows? Why are the bells so annoying and weird? Why do um why do school security guards have handcuffs? It's just like the weirdest things. And like, any person from any less capitalist country could see that. So I think that making Black Lives Matter in schools is not only like defunding school police and ending random searches, but also like looking at the most obvious things. Like, there's no reason why I should have to Google basic Black history. We're not taught about the civil rights movement. I bet we'll be taught about the Holocaust. We are going to be taught about the Holocaust. And that's anti-Black. It is. And the fact that like so many teachers get mad at me for that specific comparison is weird. And it's not me, and it's not like Black people being overly sensitive, and it's not anti-Semitism. I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn about the Holocaust. I think that's important. I think that's my culture. And I also want to learn about, the civil rights movement and segregation. So like, it's the most obvious things. People have been talking about this for years. And the fact that we still have to talk about this and bring it up over and over again so annoyingly to the people in positions of power is like honestly draining, mentally draining.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about that, and even when the civil rights is discussed, it's in a very whitewashed sort of a like very
Mhm.
level, right? And yeah, I think this is something, just thinking of what does it really mean, right, to actually meaningfully incorporate something into a curriculum, right, and not just sort of say, okay, well, MLK Day, we'll share some quotes and we'll be good, and so yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about what you're saying, and then also the burden then like that puts on you and other students to then have to not only then bring that information in, but then get backlash on top of that, right? So it's like sort of this double labor happening. But thank you so much for sharing about that, and I think just wanted to close, and of course want to remind folks, if you have any questions or comments for Amara, please feel free to put that in the chat. And so I want to ask then how, first, thank you for being here, and also ask, how can people support both Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard and Students Deserve, whether it's showing up, funds, whatever it is? What would you say?
I don't know how you can fund Students Deserve, but I do know that you can ask them about that on their Instagram, which is LA_Students Deserve. You can check all updates on their page. Any action that they have is going to be on their page. Another thing is, for Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard, you can donate to Black Lives Matter's Gofundme, BLMLA's Gofundme, and I think you can put like a little side note of where you want the money to go, and say you want it to go to Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard. Yeah, so that's just like what you can do to support us. You can also follow the Black Lives Matter Youth Instagram at BLMLA Youth. All updates are on that page. We haven't been posting recently because we haven't done a lot of actions recently, but we will be. We have a lot coming up. So yeah, just keep your eyes open, really. Like, the biggest thing that you can do is come out and support. That's one of our biggest things. Another thing is you can come out to weekly actions. Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'm not sure where it is. Oh, my mom just put it into the chat. It's 1313 West 8th Street, I think. But updates are also going to be on the Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard Instagram. So.
Nice, thank you. Amara, I was gonna ask if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat to everyone, just the tags.
It's in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Actually, no, sorry, I meant the social media tag names for BLM Youth Vanguard and Students Deserve. That way, folks can reach out and follow there. I know you also gave a GoFundMe. Would you mind putting that in the chat?
I don't know the GoFundMe.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Maybe
Mama, okay, she put it into the chat.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, okay, we can, I think I'm not sure who it was sent to, maybe one of the hosts, maybe we can put it on the chat.
The GoFundMe?
Yeah, I think, because right now the chat, unfortunately, it's private, but maybe whoever it went to can just.
Okay. Am I a host?
I think you are, Amara, yeah. But that's fine. No, we can you can maybe do that in a minute. I wanted to just see if there was anything else, just any thoughts you wanted to share. Okay, perfect. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Yeah, so just wanted to leave it open if anything else you'd like to share, just general thoughts.
No, I think we covered everything. You asked some good questions.
Thank you. No, I'm really happy you joined us tonight, Amara, and I think I think this is what youth power is all about. And I mean, our fight is intergenerational, but without the energy of young folks, we're nothing. So really want to honor and appreciate that. And so yeah, thank you again for joining us. And
can I ask a question?
Put it out for if anyone has questions. So yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to ask about so Amara, one of the things that we've been doing this thing in the coalition is looking at that how, just people are being watched and surveilled, and just like how you were talking about, school police constantly watching kids, school teachers, administrators, counselors. So for many of us, it's happening from many different levels. Wherever we go, our information is being taken. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about and we have kind of mapped it out as a stalker state, how we are constantly being traced and tracked and monitored. So what about, how does it play out for youth, you think, in different ways?
I mean, for me, I think through my entire middle school, I've been way too familiar with school police. I've always felt like they were watching me. I've always had my teachers even call school police on me constantly, have school police escort me to the principal or something. And it's things that we don't need school police for, things that home monitors should do or campus aides should be doing. So I think that LASPD was becoming normal inside schools, was becoming just a part of the routine. It was the weirdest things. Why do I need LASPD to tell me where to go to my class? I think it's just schools trying to get youth to be comfortable with police, especially in Black and brown schools, which is not something that's as good as they try to make it seem. We know that police doesn't protect us. Police protects white people. Police protects anybody who likes police. And even that's not enough for Black and brown youth. So I think it was just like us being surveilled constantly by police. Us being watched constantly by police was like just something that we had to deal with on a daily basis. And when I did get to the school that had the school police, I thought it was weird, but then everybody was like, oh, no, they're here every day. It's fine, whatever, who cares? So it's just like something that was normalized that shouldn't have been.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you, Amara. Yeah, any other comments or questions for Amara? I don't think I saw any. I don't know if anybody else saw any questions sent to them. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you again, Amara. And I just wanted to also. I know some of you have another member of Students Deserve here, so I wanted to just see if you would like to share anything and welcome you as well, Mao. I don't know if you're able to unmute. Yeah, if you'd like to just talk about maybe some of the victories or any thoughts you would like to share. But again, I think Amara repped really well, so thank you again.
What's good, y'all? My name is Mal. I'm a organizer with Students Deserve. And now y'all are right. Amara did an amazing job in covering some of our major victories and some of the landscape that we're currently having to navigate. And I think, you know, Black youth and the leadership of BLM has really shown us, right, that a new world is possible, right? And as we continue to abolish these systems and create new systems for our community, we really got to center the leadership of Black students and, you know, Black community members who have continuously shown us that these systems were meant for us. And so I just want to hype up Amara for really, you know, showing out and describing some of the wins. And as she mentioned, right, like we've known that school police and police in general, like we wanted to abolish them for a really long time now. And so it wasn't, you know, till these last couple of years that we've really been able to build the momentum, right, and really gain the public support to really reimagine what public safety looks like, not only in our campuses, but also in our communities. So just want to give a shout out to Mara for really highlighting some of those major victories and the need for folks like yourself, right, to get involved and to really support this work that's happening. That's mainly led by, you know, young Black girls and gender nonconforming folks in our community to really continue to challenge these systems, right? Not only in our schools, but in our community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, the plazas, show your love with your reactions. I gotta update my Zoom on this, so I'm gonna just throw a clap for you. But yes, well, thank you again, Amara. Thank you, Students Deserve. Thank you for sharing as well, Mao. And wanted to just basically transition right now. We wanted to kind of open it up and go into a conversation around, you know, and I think Amara had touched on this as well, sort of thinking of like organizing online, right, in the time of COVID. And so just want to transition into having a dialogue, having a conversation. So we will be opening up the chat. We'll definitely be monitoring it well, because we did have the Zoom bomber last time. So we can maybe open up the chat. But basically what we want to talk about is have a conversation around. So we talk about what it means to be youth-led, right? We've had these conversations and organizing. And so thinking of the context of organizing online, right? Digital organizing. So just a couple of things sort of to help maybe put some context to the conversation is thinking of, right, so some of the grants. And Celine had mentioned that in talking about how some of the grants around countering violent extremism, they primarily go to actually community orgs or nonprofits to essentially police each other. They come from the Department of Homeland Security. And so given the fact that we have those grants, there's also another program, right, PATH, which stands for Providing Alternatives to Hinder Extremism. It's actually the LAPD's local form of countering violent extremism, right? So given the fact that Preventing Violent Extremism, PVE, even though LAUSD has not officially accepted the guidelines, it's still manifesting in different ways, right? And so one way is through the grant to the Simon Wiesenthal Center, also known as the Museum of Tolerance, right? Which is a field trip, a very common field trip for elementary students. So given the grid expansion, right, which targets young people then as gang members. And then now we have coming up, and this is kind of where the question comes in around what can our organizing look like, around this. There are upcoming grants that the Department of Homeland Security is looking to double the amount of funding, right? So basically turning our communities against each other into policing each other. So just wanted to put this question out there then, what, and of course we have examples, we've been, folks have been doing it, but what does digital organizing then really look like right now? Given the fact that Preventing Violent Extremism, it has been unfolding and will continue to unfold, and it's specifically targeting young people, right, K through 12. So just wanted to put that question out there to folks, and just have that conversation, a brainstorm, a strategy conversation, just around what y'all think digital organizing can look like and should look like. And I can type a little bit of that in the chat too. So. And I know also, Akil, I don't know if you got to, I know Akil and Celine will be helping to facilitate this conversation. I'm sorry, Akil, I don't think you got to introduce yourself.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Akil. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And Nadia, if you want, I can type it into the chat too, since are you on your phone? I can type it.
I don't mind.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I can definitely type it, no problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the question is just, how can we creatively organize during this time online and digitally, especially in the K through 12 context, given these different grants to community organizations, to state and local governments, and then also the different ways that the grant operates.
And just want to add too, right? So even if maybe folks don't sort of have like a thing about specifically this, maybe if folks want to share their own context, right? Or maybe things they have done, or just in general, right? Organizing online, right? And particularly with young folks. So I want to invite folks to share in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute as well.
I know personally working at a university, like when we're trying to organize, it's been really helpful to like have like all these links of like the really messed up organizations like in our like organizing Discord, so that we could always like go back and like share like those links. And when we're like writing up reports about like the links between these messed up organizations, it's like easy to go back. And I also know that there's a great website that a colleague linked me to called Little Sis, and it's a sort of Wikipedia on power mapping. So we're not just power mapping in our own community, but then like folks can also use our research in terms of like where the messed up stuff is traced from. So that's helpful for me.
Yeah, I think like with our members and youth, we've just been talking more about digital security, of course, like building up more of a an understanding of digital security, and also trying to transition to different platforms depending on the meeting topic, like if it is more like strategy focused and, moving to a more secure platform. So we've been trying to like use things like, in addition to Signal, like platforms like Jitsi and Wicker that have like, where you can do encrypted calls and still share your screen and all of that. And I think just also doing trainings around security, not just, relating to technology, but how we kind of engage in general in our organizations, and just making sure that, for example, like us being accountable to each other is like about having this culture of like security, and where we're kind of protecting each other as members of an organization through accountability, just making sure that no one's kind of just going off and doing something on their own that can potentially undermine the work of our organization, or making sure that, we whatever decisions we make collectively, and we move forward with the collective decisions, because especially with like a lot of organizing, we get like sometimes, like for example, like you'll get a request from a certain group or organization, then like you kind of like dig deep into it, and that you find it's, like for example, like when we host webinars and we get people who register for the webinars, we found people in those with a Google search that they like work for law enforcement or like the feds in some way. So just making sure that we have those practices where we're able to just be kind of like thorough, but also I think kind of just like building community safety and practices for community safety outside of like how we think about it traditionally, if that makes sense. So I think just starting those conversations has been helpful with youth. And of course, making everything interactive as possible and as visual as possible, because people get really tired on Zoom as well. And making sure we can have social events and like fun events and stuff for youth too.
I have a related question to this that I'd love to hear, people's thoughts about, which is, I feel like a lot of times we try to do something that's like a version of what we were doing before this pandemic, but slightly less good, or I guess I should just try to say like, it's just more difficult to do what we were doing before, and we try to find some way to approximate it. But I'm just curious what people think are the advantages of this situation, and what we've learned from being in this situation that will improve our organizing when we hopefully get out of it too. And I'm also just personally thinking about how it does allow us to connect in a different way with people who are much farther away, so I'm just curious what people think are some advantages of digital or online organizing, and how we can learn from that when we hopefully resume much more in-person stuff safely. So Sydney, I put in the chat, I know that I've admired Stop LAPD Spying's work for a while, but because I'm based in Maryland, I was previously unable to attend meetings, which is awesome, so that we can connect across 3,000 miles. Mamta says likewise. Yeah, I was thinking about this because in my work, part of my work as a teacher, I noticed that some students actually thrive in the online setting, even when others are not thriving as much. And I noticed that for some students, having the option to turn off their screen makes them participate a lot more in the chat, and they're just really engaged through the chat. And for others, they actually really like being able to, you know, showcase things from their home and, you know, show off their pet and stuff like that. I was even just thinking for our organizing, there are people who may function better in this space in terms of socializing than in a room where there's this, and then finally, there's people who have access, even if you're close by, but whether it's due to disability or due to just the fact that there, for some people, whether it's, you know, for gender or race, or other reasons, it's sometimes much more dangerous to get to a meeting at 6 p.m. at night at LA Can, you know, and they can participate over Zoom. But yeah, any last thoughts? Oh, I see Meghna put, I'm a youth organizer, part of Cops Out CPS in Chicago, and I really wanted to hear what you all were doing. This is so informative. Thank you. Awesome. Oh, and so Paul said having some kind of stream or virtual component seems like it's here to stay, the same way Sydney said. Absolutely. Wonderful. Any last thoughts on this before we, and also feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute. Any last thoughts on this before we move on to the next segment? Okay, cool. A lot of unraised hands. Oh, here's Paul again. As a grad student and teacher, I feel like I've learned so much from youth. Wonderful. Paul, do you want to share any one specific thing?
Oh, sure. Um, yeah, I mean, that kind of like streaming and just all the different kinds of like use of digital media and social media to communicate in like all these new ways. Like, I know you all posed the question to us, and I'm thinking like, I've learned much more. I've learned so much this year from you know, I feel like I've innovated very little in the way that I haven't thought of any new ways to communicate and like teach as much as I've learned from young people, different modalities that they're using through which teaching becomes like salient, you know, like something that resonates with them.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So transitioning to our next segment. So for this one, a little bit of the context. Last month, February, there were four bills put forward in the state of California. Oh, thank you, Pancake. Awesome. So there were 4 bills put forward for the state of California on hate crimes. And what we wanted to do is have a little bit of conversation around this because of the context, and also just rooting this in the fact that as an abolitionist organization, Stop LAPD Spying opposes policing, and we hold that all the white supremacy that these hate crime bills are, you know, hopefully, you know, for some people trying to prevent or stop, the police are actually embodiments of that in the first place. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is a little bit about hate crime bills, what we think of our analysis of them is, like if we could discuss that together, and also what we can imagine to be actual safety for all of our communities beyond what hate crime bills can provide. So first, I wanted to know if actually, Celine, would you be willing to talk a little bit about the connections between the hate crime bills and the ethnic studies fight before we had that conversation? And then we can
yeah, to be honest, I don't have too many details about this yet because we had only just started talking about this last week, but I think it was just about how like some of the hate crime bills had some vague language around you know, certain kinds of labeling certain kinds of speech in schools as hate crimes, or being able to penalize educators through a penal code for saying certain things. But the thing is, like, we're not quite sure, because the language is vague. It's not sure. We're not sure if they're going to do the thing where they equate right-wing hate speech and quote unquote left-wing hate speech, which is what they do all the time. So if they lump left-wing in that, then like the stuff that we're talking about would be categorized as hate crime, and that could potentially be criminalized through these bills. So that's what I think we're like trying to figure out now, and trying to see if you know, I think one other thing we wanted to discuss was like if we wanted to file some records requests to try to get more information on that, or what we could do to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that would be ridiculous if that gets actually, if our organizing gets criminalized like through those kinds of bills in schools.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly to just show a little bit of a taste of what these bills look like. So there are 4 bills on the table right now, and then there's one that's an older bill as well. But this first one, which is AB 57, basically it's saying that it's creating a video course available for law enforcement for this quote unquote peace officer trainings. And basically it's about, and we wanted to know, one of the things we want to know is who is creating this and who is defining what a hate crime is according to this. So this is one of the bills, and it includes training law enforcement on what are indicators of hate crimes. And it also talks about something they call multi-mission criminal extremism. And what's interesting is they do mention some very important categories of white supremacist violence that we care deeply about, which is anti-Arab, anti-Middle Eastern, anti-Islamic hate. They also talk about violence against people who are either actually unhoused or perceived to be unhoused. However, one of the things that we are cautious about with all of this is that this is putting law enforcement and police as the solution to this, you know, and training the police in a way that we don't know if they were going to equate left-wing and right-wing violence, white supremacist violence, and resistance to that. So here's one of the bills. The second bill is basically increasing the punishment for hate crimes. So basically it's talking about how existing law makes it a misdemeanor, but the bill would like to classify all the crimes as either a misdemeanor or a felony, and then basically set a certain amount of jail time. So that's the second bill, is increasing punishment. First bill is about training. The third bill is about creating what they call a commission on the state of hate. So this would be appointed members by the government of California, 4 by the governor, 3 by the Speaker of the Assembly, and 3 by the Senate Committee on Rules. Then basically they're gonna advise on hate crimes for the state. And then the last bill, which is the most insidious looking one, is about this is Senate Bill 764, California Senate, which is about domestic terrorism. So they are basically creating a task force that would be combating domestic terrorism. It says as defined, although we would be really interested to know how they define it. And one of the things that they're going to talk about is not only basically law enforcement stepping up with sort of a domestic war on terror, but then there's also going to be intelligence-based assessment, which is data-driven policing of domestic terrorism. And then finally, there would be, let me find it. I think that's the main thing. Sorry, I think I thought there was one other thing I wanted to highlight about this one. But these are 4 bills that are currently on the table in the state of California. And one thing that's very important to know about these bills, one of the reasons that we're very concerned or wanted to look into them is because the lawmakers that have been pushing these bills are the lawmakers that have been pushing back most intensely against ethnic studies, and specifically about co-opting and watering down ethnic studies, especially targeting Palestinians. So part of that is removing the Arab American Studies program that rightfully should be in Asian American Studies, trying to introduce the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which would criminalize Palestinians and anti-Zionists. And also, it's a broad range of things because it starts off with that, but then they also are trying to remove the term capitalism from the curriculum. They're trying to remove the term right wing from the curriculum. They're trying to basically create an ethnic studies that that doesn't threaten the status of anybody in power or even the reputation of anybody in power. So that's one of the reasons we're concerned about this. If these people are the ones defining what hate is, you know, what can we expect out of these hate crime laws? And then secondly, if the police and the Homeland Security are the ones that are going to be enforcing it, this is why we oppose this sort of war on terror framework, because we as abolitionists understand those systems to be fundamentally white supremacists themselves. So how would they, without a deep contradiction, be our safety against white supremacy? So given that, I wanted to have a little bit of an open discussion. We wanted to have a discussion about, you know, what should be our response to these hate crime bills? What should be our perspective on them? And then also, how do we have real safety because the violence is real, as everybody here knows, you know, the bullying, the harassment, the targeting, the vigilante violence, meaning violence by non-law enforcement, is extremely real and threatening. So given that, what should be our recourse if not to turn to law enforcement? So opening it up, you can post into the chat. You can also unmute or raise your hand to unmute, and we would love to hear your thoughts.
I kind of had some thoughts too. Was just thinking, you know, of yeah, I mean, like even folks that I know are against the police, right? They're like FTP all the way, but even then, still, kind of thinking, well, you know, well, if they're going after white supremacists, right? So I think for me, I think just being able to keep putting, yeah, I guess keep putting this narrative out there and just reminding folks, like, you know, I mean, not reminding folks, we already know the state is white supremacist, but I think just sort of pointing out like how that contradiction, like you called it, a kill. So I think continuing to point that out as well. And in the context of CVE, right, countering violent extremism, I think really exposing the reality that these words they're using, that, oh, we're going to go after violent extremists, oh, we're going to go after white supremacist violent extremists. I think we have to keep just loudly debunking that. And I know we're going to go into creating some pop-ed later and kind of brainstorming, but I definitely just thinking of, I think that needs to be one of the first pop-ed material, popular education materials that we make, is really kind of showing this transition into that, and how not only this, like first we've had this transition from gang narrative into violent extremism, and now that the violent extremism narrative, folks are pushing against it, they're like, okay, well, no, fine, we're going to actually just use it against white supremacists. So I think, how do we kind of just keep exposing that?
Yeah, I just building off what you said, Nadia, I think that it's really important that we kind of show that when they say that they want to go after, quote unquote, you know, they'll say they want to go after white supremacists as if the state isn't a white supremacist institution, or they try to say that, oh, this is so different from what we are as a state, or as, you know, as the feds or as the police. Like, this is what they're doing through trying to push this framework. And it tries to direct our attention to the violence of individual actors and not seeing it as a product of a white supremacist society, or the fact that that the United States is white supremacist fundamentally. So, and they also try to frame it as though this is just this like fringe behavior, when really this is what white supremacy is, and this is what the state is and what it does, even if the state's violence isn't always as explicit in these ways. So I feel like, also using this legislation that's going after like arresting individuals is going to still leave intact the white supremacist institutions, including the criminal legal system that harm our communities every day. So I think that's something that we need to debunk if we're going to create popular education materials. These are the types of things that we should say to kind of debunk the whole framework of like domestic terrorism, and kind of expose how the state is using it when they use this language in their legislation. That's what they're using it for. And we also know that like the way it gets implemented, they're not going to go after white people with these legislation. They're going to keep going after our communities. We've seen this over and over again with programs like Countering Violent Extremism, like you were saying, Nadia. So I just wanted to add that.
We're also open to pushback in case anybody has a disagreement with this idea, because I know that one of the things that we're all feeling in the wake of the white supremacist mob in January is just the incredible presence and escalation of vigilante white supremacist violence, So that's one of the reasons that we don't want to sort of be cavalier about it and just kind of like say, we're just going to, deal with it. We want to know how we can strategize to face it without strengthening the police state.
Yeah, thank you, Celine. Yeah, if anyone, if folks have questions too, we're going to be transitioning soon. We wanted to share some of our materials with you all as well, and just get some ideas, get some feedback. So we'll be getting into that soon. But yeah, if anyone has questions before we transition into that.
Yes, go for it. I think I just asked you to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for typing the bill numbers in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely like, as soon as you did that, I went and just like compared it with, with like the positions that my union has like taken on. I'm like a California Teachers Association member, and like, yeah, I'm super, personally, I'm quite, I feel pretty good about the position that the union has taken, in the fight for authentic like ethnic studies, and pushing back against, pushing for, the original like model, the model curriculum as the original authors intended, and and like more so towards, the critical and the like liberatory side of things. but then I go and, check the bill positions, and I don't know how recently this has been updated, but, they haven't taken any positions on any of this legislation. So yeah, I wonder if that's something that I can, with the right materials, if I could like have some conversations with other members about like how, if we're committed to like ethnic studies you know that is, if we're committed to the original model curriculum and to that original like approach to ethnic studies, then like we've got to consider this as well, like in fighting this kind of like, this like kind of corruption of our, of the principles of like what the original authors of the curriculum like really intended.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that one of the things that we're really interested to learn with this hate crime laws is to what extent they are reflective of and connected to that basically censorship of ethnic studies, but because we know it's the same politicians who have been deeply fighting ethnic studies who are putting these ones forward. Jesse Gabriel is one of the main ones. However, similarly to the ethnic studies conversation, they have organized a big multi-ethnic, multicultural coalition in support of these laws, especially because there's so much virulent anti-Asian violence going on right now, and also against ethnic studies, or for the watering down of the original purpose of ethnic studies, which is not about multiculturalism, but about anti-colonialism. So it's a really interesting fine line to walk and trying to, because we, to some extent, we want the same thing as an Asian civil rights group that is mobilizing in favor of this law, which is that we want that violence to stop. But then there's a point of departure. Yeah. So yeah, it would be really interested to talk with you about it later. Also, anybody who's interested, including Paul, we have our working meeting on the third Wednesday of every month, and it's at 6 p.m. on Zoom, and PST, and you can fill out our campaign interest form, which is in the chat. Celine, I think I cut you off. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that the same thing, that we'd love to also talk to you like more maybe after this meeting about this, because I think as we get updates, maybe on our next meeting, like for next month, maybe we can come back with some more updates when we learn more about this. But still would love to connect. And again, anyone in the chat who wants to, in our working group meetings, we go much more in depth into like strategizing and stuff. So would love to have you all join those.
All right. Should we maybe transition into the some of our pop ed material? Cool. So basically, what we were hoping to spend the last part of the meeting on, and actually, the fact that it is a small group, it's sometimes even a little more helpful when we do these kinds of things, is we've had a lot of popular education material as well that we've made over the last couple of years of this fight. And we're definitely, we have curriculum and workshops, and we've been wanting to create some new popular education material as well. And so what we'd like to do is Celine and we're going to show a couple of different things, and we actually would love to get some of your feedback and also some ideas, right? Some ideas for new popular education material, whether it's a type of pop ed, or and pop ed is basically popular education material, and in case folks don't know, it's basically a way to get your message out there, so popularizing our message, right? And so we would love to get your feedback on it. We'll share our screens and show you. And also, if, like I said, if anyone has any new idea, right, of whether it's a type of material or specific content. So I'll pass it off to Celine. I know Celine is going to start off just by showing one of our original flyers and our trifolds. And then getting your feedback and seeing what y'all think too. We want to develop a new one. We definitely are in need of a new one. It's really been a great piece to have. We've shared it with a lot of folks. But as always, right, it's all about evolving. Yes, go ahead, Echo.
Sorry, I just wanted to put out there, Hamid, if you're there, I think we had wanted to stop the recording for the section that we were going to collaborate on the pop-ed material. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So do you want me to just pause it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do one of us, Celine, Nadia, or me, or you can fill out the campaign interest form.
Yeah, I'd also say that the webinar that we do want to plan, we've given this workshop where we go much more in depth into this organization and its relationship with CVE and stuff. We've given it to teachers and students, but we're going to do more of like a public facing webinar about it in the next month or so. So if you fill out the interest form, we'll definitely send a message to everybody with the details on that.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, just wanted to open it up to see if folks have any announcements that they would like to share, any support needed. Also, Hamid, if there's any general announcements that you'd like to share for the coalition too.
Yeah, just a couple things that we have our third Tuesday next Tuesday on the 16th. So that's going to be just kind of our general political landscape as to where things are going and what kind of organizing is going on. So that's going to be next Tuesday, and come and join us. And then also be on a lookout. We're also looking to publish a report in the next 2 to 3 weeks, releasing early April on this intersection of land and policing and various other things. So thank you. Thanks, Nadia.
Thanks, thank you. Anybody else have an announcement they would like to share? Okay. All right, great. Well, just thank you again for joining us. I know a lot of folks had to leave earlier, so didn't get to thank them as well, but definitely really want to, shout out Amara again and Students Deserve, and BLM Youth Vanguard for all their work. So yeah, I think with that, we'll probably just close for tonight. And so wishing you all a great evening. And again, we do have our working meeting where we go into working on some of our materials a little more in depth. And that's going to be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. So if you look in the chat, the information's there. All right. Y'all take care. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye, everybody. Take care. Bye.